anybody. I didn't eat all that much, and I just felt really down all the time.
Feeling sad is usually a temporary thing that's related to something that happened in someone's life or some situation or event. Feeling depressed is when someone is experiencing maybe sad feelings and probably a bunch of other kinds of things that feel bad too over a long period of time, and that it's getting in the way of doing things that people typically like to do. People can become depressed for all sorts of different reasons. Sometimes it's because of a chemical change in their bodies. Sometimes it's because of a really, really upsetting situation that happened in their life. And sometimes it has to do with what might run in their family.
Depression impacts many parts of your life. It causes big changes in your feelings and actions. It can cloud your thinking and increase risk for suicide.
Thinking about suicide, it's usually an indicator that there's an underlying mental health issue, and that mental health issue tends to be depression. So some of the warning signs for suicide can be changes in our sleep patterns. So sleeping a lot more or sleeping a lot less than we used to. Feeling really angry or irritable most of the time, as well as just feelings of hopelessness around the future.
See if you notice any of these warning signs in the scene between David and Aiden.
Hey, what are you doing?
Trying to find my old soccer cleats.
Uh-huh. Why?
Because Emma's fell apart and Mom figures my old ones will last her through the season.
Just get new ones. They don't cost that much. I don't get it.
That's because you have two parents with jobs. I have one parent who can't work because of her condition, two kid sisters to take care of, and a worthless older brother.
Doesn't your brother have a job?
Well, yeah, but he only has money for junk food and games. None for Emma and Taylor. They deserve better.
I didn't know it was that bad. You never said anything. To me, at least.
What's the point of whining about it? I'm trapped and there's nothing I can do about it. I love my little sisters, but there's only so much I can do for them. I don't have money, I can't work, I can't drive. I can barely pass my classes.
Why? You're as smart as me.
Well, first I just had a hard time concentrating, then I just didn't care. I feel like I have all this weight in my chest. I wish I could just drop dead like my Uncle Hector.
That stuff you're saying? In health science, Mr. Hughes said that if we heard someone saying something like that, to tell an adult.
Mr. Hughes said, you keep your big mouth shut and mind your own business. Understand?
Hey, I'm on your side. I just came by in case you wanted to hang out like we used to. I'm not gonna do anything behind your back. Just don't think it's because I'm afraid of you, because I'm not. Do what you want.
Here's what you don't want to do. Don't think that depression always looks like sadness. Anger is also common. And don't leave the person alone. Don't worry if you've reacted this way in the past. Let's look at the best way to respond.
Keep your big mouth shut and mind your own business. Understand?
You're threatening me? We've been friends since 3rd grade. You're not much good to your little sisters if you're all messed up. Or dead.
Well, I'd rather be dead than have you telling everyone about my problems.
If I was saying the things you're saying, you'd want to help, right? Look, I don't have your problems, but a lot of other kids do. Last year, a friend of ours was having a hard time keeping it together and got help. And it started by talking to an adult.
What friend? Who are you talking about?
I'm not gonna tell you because I don't have a big mouth, no matter what you think.
In my family, we don't get counseling.
I know you feel like you can't talk to your mom, but my mom's easy to talk to. Let's go see what she thinks. Later on, I'll help you find those cleats, okay?
What warning signs did you notice? Withdrawing from friends, can't concentrate or think straight, suddenly not caring about school, anger, feeling trapped and hopeless, saying things like, I wish I could drop dead. Here's what David did right. Act, acknowledge, paid attention to the warning signs he saw and took them seriously. Care, listen to Aiden and let him know he was worried about him. Tell, convinced Aiden to talk to an adult and took him straight there.
Have you ever been afraid to bring up a suicide because you thought that you might give a friend the idea?
I used to be like that, but now I know that it's okay to ask somebody if they're feeling suicidal. It's not going to put the idea in their head.
Yeah. Like when I was talking to my older sister who was depressed, She said that people who are thinking about it, they really do appreciate it because that gives them a chance to talk about it.
There are many common myths of suicide. One of them is that talking about suicide, if you bring it up or ask somebody, that it might make somebody suicidal. And that's a complete myth. The reality is the majority of time when someone brings it up, people feel super amounts of relief that someone noticed and someone is talking about it.
I think there are like some secrets that should be shared, and if you're worried about a friend that they might hurt themselves, I think you have to share that.
If you're really worried about somebody, then you're actually being a good friend by telling someone and asking for help. I had a friend once, and he just started acting really differently. He never hung out with us anymore, and he lost interest in school and sports and all the other things that he used to be into. So one day, I stayed after school and talked to one of our teachers and told him what was going on. And I'm not exactly sure what happened after that, but my friend goes to counseling now, and he seems like his normal self again.
They shouldn't feel ashamed of anything to just ask for help.
There's no shame in getting help, ever.
Sometimes when people have depression, it can change the way that people think about things, and problems that might otherwise be easily solvable start to feel like a really big deal. And the thing is, it's really important to remember is that depression is treatable and people can get better if they get help. So it's really important if you think that you or someone you know might be experiencing symptoms of depression that you get them to an adult so that they can get help.
That was clip one. Do y'all want to continue so you see them all?
Can you skip forward to the interactions?
The interactions?
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe not all, but if there's something else that.
Yes.
Each clip is in English and then there's in Spanish.
Awesome.
Yes. So what there also is really quick too, we will, there is a, so we can do, like in a lot of the schools there's a parent presentation, so we can do a parent meeting. Some of them are setting up at open house, when the teachers go around, we're gonna have a table with the information and the slide going so they can look at it and we can let them know. We do have a staff member who is going to record. Hey, Chrissy. Hello. Who is going to record the presentation for we're going to be able to put that up for parents so they can review it. So if the district wants to put it on their website or the school website, or we can put it through our social media also. So any parents that didn't get to make the meeting, they can see the parent information. There is a parent letter, that we can send out. We have in English and in Spanish. And an opt-out form. If the school chooses or the district would rather it be an opt-out form. So some of them, we're sending them out and the district says, hey, or the school, whichever one, we want it, if you send it this date, we're gonna give it 2 weeks, or we're gonna give it a week and collect all the opt-out forms. And then when we're doing that, we'll make sure if a parent opts out. Some schools, because it's now a law, most districts are using this as their awareness, because the new House bill that we have to do it. So some are saying, let's just do it. And then some are like, no, we know. So everybody knows their own district, their own families, and what they need to do. So we've tried to cover all the bases where we'll send out a parent meeting, there's a letter, there's an opt-out form, and we'll have some social media and some access to it online for parents who can't come.
And so when you run this program, how often are you seeing it? Is it once a week, or like when you start to run it, like how long does it run, I guess?
So we do it once in the whole year. So we try to hit every student. So some of our schools are going through history class. Some of the middle schools, as long as our staff has the support of people being in there with them, they're doing like 7th grade PE classes one day,
Like an eighth class. Okay, It's not like a series.
No, ma'am. It's one presentation, and then that's it.
Yeah, it's just done in isolation, right? It's not like it's a concurrent series.
It's not a concurrent, yes.
Okay.
We do it one time in September. We offer it to make sure every student gets it, so, everybody has access to it, and that they know if maybe they don't identify it, if they don't
feel they have somebody in their family or their home life, you know, the girls are there to kind of help give them a face to a safe place and a trusted adult they can speak to just in case. And, but yes, ma'am, just one time. So some are doing PE, some are just doing history because everybody's got them.
You said that the opt-out, so the opt-out is kind of like, the parents can opt out of their kids.
Correct.
Going through this.
Correct.
But now, does that mean that the parents have had to have gone through it to be able to opt their kids out of it?
Yeah,
Or
so
something
it's like a parent letter goes home with the
Yeah, I know,
opt-out.
but yeah.
Or if there's information like maybe we put it on our Facebook or the district, if you do not want your child, you know, please let it, we have an opt-out form that you can fill out. So, that is how, and your student will go through it unless, so we don't do the opposite where you have to have it. So your student just, if you return it saying you don't want your child to participate in it, then that's how we do it. So we can just make sure it's known in the parent letters that, you know, we have them here if you don't want your child, because, you know, not too many people take notes home, you know, put them in backpacks or folders. That's, you know, not as much. So we can do what the school would like us to do on how to get those forms out. So the girls can work that with their school, you know, their administration, how they want that part run.
And you said this was a new House bill. Do you happen to know the number?
Yes, it is. Senate Bill, are you talking about Senate Bill 9?
Yes.
Okay.
Where we have to do all schools must give suicide awareness.
Okay.
So I think that actually is not 9, because 9 has got the child abuse, human trafficking, and dating violence.
Yes.
That's the one that really gets everybody riled up because of the human sexuality factor behind just the nature of that whole entire bill. But as far as the compliance and requirement to provide instruction based on suicide risk assessment prevention, that is required because those are now built into the TEKS.
Yes.
And so part of that is an expectation for us to teach and to complete with our students.
So even though it's a TEK, they can still opt out of it?
Only in the sense that if the TEK might differ or differentiate away from what is just required, like this, the basics, because I'm gonna assume that this lesson is all encompassing and will go above and beyond just the standard TEK. And also as a kind of just safeguard, but also too as best practice, it is kind of good to treat it in the same manner, just so that we're being fully transparent and being clear with parents and our community members about what we are doing, why we're doing what we're doing, and for them to have that opportunity to provide feedback or just to simply say, you know what, I appreciate it, but I'm gonna not have my student participate.
Opens up the dialogue at home.
Yes.
Right.
Exactly, so that's why.
What most
This
people
all
who
falls under
opt
Senate
out,
Bill
that's the
9.
reason.
Is that what you were saying?
Well, Senate Bill 9 really talks about other components of this. This is more along another House bill, which
I thought it was House Bill.
Bill 2452?
that sounds more
Okay,
along the same lines, yes.
2452.
Yeah.
Because this kind of topic is a bit
And then-
different than the dating violence,
Correct.
the
Right, right.
homosexuality.
It's a totally
And
different
these
one.
are under the TEKS for health?
Health.
Okay, the health requirements.
So behavioral health
Technically,
crisis.
yes.
Behavioral health crisis, okay, sorry.
Right.
So this is, you know, and most parents just say, this is something I want to speak to my child at home about, and we respect that. But this will also give them, you know, we just try to give them, there's handouts we'll have, you know, if we do, for the parents, it's really pushing that ACT. It talks a lot about, you know, the ACT, and so what to do, and like teaching them, you know, like that was showing the kids, I know sometimes they might go, that's a little cheesy, but, some of them have said that, but when you look at the content of it, you know, it showed like how he reacted first, and then like, this is what, you know, and don't worry that you did that, but you know, this is another way you could treat it that will help. So it's giving them some tools in their tool belt with this situation.
And I thought the acting got better as time was going on. I was impressed. It was all about growth, right? We started off a little like, okay, a little cheesy, but
It did get better. Yes.
They have me hooked.
Yes, ma'am.
I just wondered, so this is like the middle school one? Is the high school one kind of the same content with just older looking kids? Or is
Yeah,
it the
it's
same?
You're just bigger, right?
Yeah, it is. The situations are pretty much the same. The students are older. The atmosphere is more high school, and yeah,
It's still the same.
But it's still the
That's the
same,
concept,
everything is the same concept, you know, all the same thing. And, and some of our staff even do this with their teachers. You know, some of our schools want the teachers to do it like in a faculty meeting, you know, just talking about, because I mean, most of them, if we do it in a classroom, the teachers are going to see it, but only the history teachers, if that's what we do it. So it's great information for, you know, for any of us to have. And so, you know, sometimes we need to also learn it's okay to talk about it. And, you know, do you have somebody that you can talk to when you're feeling upset, and do you have that person in your life? And if, you know, so that's we talked about the same thing. They did the forms in English and in Spanish to help out with the families. We've had good, I mean, this is our third year to kind of really try to do it. The second year probably really like in every student. You know, before it was kind of like, hey, we're going to put it up and, you know, try to get them to get it. But this is our second year. We've had really great success with it so far. We haven't had anybody who there was big issues. Now, maybe some, it was Beeville. They were like, hey, she said she sent the letters home on a Monday and they were doing the presentation on Wednesday. Some parents were like, I didn't even have time to figure out what was going on. But I mean, this school was like, okay, hold on. But they, you know, they're the ones who said it. So we learned this year. So we told everybody, get with your school, you know, make sure ask how much time that you want to give the parents. Because if they get the letter and they want to come up and speak to the girls about it, or they want to see it, or they have a question, we want them to feel comfortable with what their child's about to see. We have to think of it as, you know, your own child. You know, you want to make sure. And then if you see it, you can have those conversations that day. Like, I know they're getting it on the 18th. Let's talk about it. So it might spear conversations that way too. So some, you know, some, like I said, some just do it, and then, but you know, everybody knows their families. You know, it's up to, you know, your district and how you want to roll the parent component out so that they know.
Just a little input for the middle school campus. I have a really great working relationship with our parent liaison. So we're trying to get this out there to parents and provide that as a parent engagement night, so where parents have the opportunity to come and see the presentation, and also offering it in, you know, maybe 2 nights or maybe the same night. The first half, you know, or first hour probably for the English-speaking families, and then the second for the Spanish-speaking families. So they have the opportunity to listen to it in both. We do also have a presentation in Spanish for those EL students that we have. So if parents want them to see it, to understand it a little bit more, they have the opportunity to see it. We can probably do a day for those students. Most importantly, I do want to present this also to the staff. Majority, or I can't say majority, but most of the time some staff members don't quite understand how to handle a situation when it comes to, and they kind of pass it on to the counselors. But if they see it before it's too late, that's the whole purpose of this, is to use it as a preventative measure, not a reactive one. We want to be proactive, and I really strongly believe, I'm a really strong believer between mental health. So this is a really good program to provide for our students and our parents and staff.
And it's a lot of the students that end up coming forward don't always come forward necessarily because they have suicidal, you know, thoughts or have friends who have suicidal thoughts. They come forward to have support throughout the rest of the school year for different things. So this kind of just opens it for a lot of other things and for that extra support on campus. And then they get to see faces, and then they start really thinking, well, who is my support system? And then they start using it.
I think that's the key part of it.
Yeah.
So I sat recently with Miss Audius because there was a situation that happened at the high school, but it affected some of the middle school kids. And some of the kids were talking to me, and they don't trust the counselors. And it's not the counselor's fault, but the responses that they gave to me, because, you know, I lent myself like, hey, you know, if you need something, and it was like, well, why would I talk to them? They don't understand. So I think it's good for them to know that they've also seen this, so that that everybody's in it together. Because it's no fault of the counselors that the kids think, oh, we can't relate to that. Because they're like, oh, they're older, you know what I mean? Or we don't see them in the hall, but there is only 2 of them, you know what I mean? So for them to know that the other staff members have seen it, then they know that they can come to Miss Cortez, or they can come to you, or they can, you know, come to whoever, so that they, you know, see you guys and know y'all are in it together.
Then do we motion this?
Yeah?
I motion to approve.
So someone is ready to motion. Gosh, it's like we read the rule book before.
I motion to approve using the SOS at both the middle school and high school.
And ACC.
To include.
Oh, okay.
For the district,
Okay.
for the district.
Yes, for the district.
A second, I'll second, sorry. That was my second, sorry.
Well, thank y'all so much for your time. Thank you very much. We're excited.
And I'm gonna say we're all in favor, right?
Yes.
Oh, sorry.
Will you post
Spoke too fast, right?
contact, if you're at the high school, are you available to come to the Academic Career Center as well? Can we schedule time with you, or would it matter?
Either one.
Either one?
Yeah,
Okay.
or we can do it together. We can do it together.
Okay, great, okay.
Yes, they're a good team over here.
Are you from the ACC?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so, because that was one of my questions, was gonna be to you. Yeah, but I can ask for those. Like, if we're allowed to service, because I know y'all have a lot of graduates too, and we have a, yeah.
We can go there and do that.
Yeah, so right now, we don't have any graduates
Not
right now. We haven't gotten any graduates yet. But yes, will you post contact information for all of y'all, just in case for some of us that are new to the district or whatever don't have it?
Yes, absolutely. I believe they were
And then
working
that way we
on
can communicate
adding
that with our
contact information
principals.
to the TM page, right? Yes.
It is.
It is on there?
Page, yes.
Okay, so our
So we have
contact
a
information.
Deloso Midway student and family support under the district page.
Okay.
And you can click there.
Department, student and family support, okay.
And so both of them are listed on the staff if you go down, yeah.
Okay, great. And that's all up to
Crystal's
date?
picture's not there because we're still waiting pictures to update, but yes, all the
I'm gonna
numbers.
blame it on the website not loading.
No, we're still waiting on pictures from other campuses, so.
Okay, great.
But yes.
So.
Okay.
All right.
Thank y'all very much. We appreciate your time. Thank y'all.
And so since it was brought up, I do want to kind of just touch base on this because I was planning on doing so anyways. Just because this was the first opportunity of the year where we've reviewed curriculum, we've approved curriculum. And so given the nature of SHAC and just where things are with needing to be fully transparent and to have a process for review and approval, one thing that we are kind of just need to be mindful of are topics such as child abuse, family violence, dating violence, and human trafficking. That all kind of goes underneath the whole human sexuality piece, where if we're wanting to go outside the scope of the required TEKS, as most lessons do, because lessons really just don't isolate 1 to 2 to 3 TEKS. They're more, as we all know, blended together. We will definitely need to be mindful of the rules and the approval processes and procedures in place for these topics. And so if there's ever a time this year where we're wanting to go, like I said, up outside the TEKS to hit a topic like this with a specific lesson that would kind of need to follow the same format, we bring it to SHAC, we have a presentation, we have the opportunity to ask questions, we discuss, we consider, and if we decide to approve, we do. And then all that will then move to the board for their review and final approval. Because it does involve curriculum, and that is within the scope of this committee's work, as well as the policy making and decision making that the board is given through their authority as board members. So that's just a quick rundown on this. As like an FAQ, feel free to go through it. I feel like as soon as I read all this stuff, I forget everything that I just read because it's very detailed and specific, but the general gist is that there are procedures in place and review processes needed to be followed. So when in doubt, ask, but more importantly, know that there's probably some sort of protocol or procedure required if it involves curriculum, instruction, lessons, students, so forth. Okay? All right, are y'all ready to bounce or what?
Yeah.
Let me get out of the way.
Thank y'all again. Y'all have a good night.
Good, that would be a good one. That's up to you.
What's the next one?
I'll say, is there a second one?
Yeah,
She's
not a
talking about the-
presentation, but
The opioids.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah, okay. I just want to make sure, like, that topic, though, we're good to move on to the opioids, right? Okay. So one thing I did kind of want to just, like I said, dive deep and get into some of the gist of things that have happened since we met last. One thing in particular that's happened since we last met was the 88th legislative session occurred, and then it passed, and then we got to learn about all the new House bills and Senate bills that were approved at that legislative session. This one was a very busy one, and for as much as I thought some things were gonna happen, some things didn't, and then a whole bunch of other stuff happened, such as things related to opioids and antagonists and unassigned medications. Some topics that perhaps some of us don't think about a whole lot, but definitely have been on the minds of our policymakers. And therefore, that's the reason why some of the new bills are coming forward, because now expectation from the state all the way down to the local level is that the districts are now having policies and procedures in place for drug preventions, for, like I said, opioid antagonists, and just intervention, prevention measures for possible overdoses, right? And when we start talking like that, I'm sure the first thing that starts popping into everybody's minds is fentanyl, right? I mean, it's hard to talk about this topic without mentioning that drug, okay? And so when we talk fentanyl, then we talk about Narcan, which is the response for a possible overdose of that drug. And so this bill really kind of ties everything back into itself. And then once we realize that now districts must adopt a policy about this topic, which will come in the next couple months once I receive those updates from TASB. I'm expecting to receive those updates probably in late September, early October. And so from there, the policies are set almost from like a state level, where we'll get a copy at the legal level, where we are bound by legal because that's state. And then we will also receive a second policy, which is local, which is within our district's control to say, yes, here's what the state requires and expects, but here's what you, as the district, the local entity, can do within the rules, right? And so part of tonight's discussion is how much in detail or how much do we want to flesh out a policy where we have response measures in place using Narcan, knowing that fentanyl is an issue, is of grave concern, and knowing that even our surrounding districts, they've already gone through some battles with that particular drug, okay? TA has released approved curriculum called One Pill Kills. And so TA's got an entire series here in English and in Spanish that addresses this topic and just has some really good information and some guidance here where we can have basically an entire kind of portfolio of curriculum at our disposal free of charge.
So-
Go ahead.
So then my question is can we start using the One Pill Kills like stuff as curriculum, or does it need to be approved here to use that for students?
I would like to approve it just because I like to be a little consistent with just the process that we're trying to follow. But technically, no, because it's from TA and it's already been vetted and pre-approved with the TEKS that are related to drug prevention and intervention. But just as a kind of newish topic, because when we say fentanyl, like obviously we're probably getting our information from the news or social media or just what we're hearing. But there is more to it than just kind of what the news media highlights, just because it's a really scary drug. And if we were in the committee from last year, we got to hear from, Mark Schauer, who came and really did from CCPD, who gave a really good presentation on his experiences from kind of boots on the ground as an officer, from his perspective, what that looks like, and perhaps some of the things that we can take away from his experiences at the school level to better prepare and help our students from ever being in a situation where they're encountering that on the streets and so forth.
And I have a question, sorry.
Yeah.
So during October, Red Ribbon Week, I was planning to do a table in the cafeteria to pass out educational information about opioids, marijuana, drinking, just pretty much everything. Does that material have to be approved? It is
Great
from.
question. I would consider that supplemental material that is not necessarily curriculum, because it's not like you're following a script or you're trying to achieve a particular learning objective. You're just handing out facts, information.
So it'll be okay.
And Denise, is it evidence-based?
I got them from online, like through the DMV, like no drive, like don't drink and drive, and it's like they're pamphlets.
They're probably already evidence-based, is what I'm
Yes.
saying, so we're good there.
Sorry.
If you look on that you pulled up a second ago, the PACS Good Behavior game is used at our primary already.
Yep.
So that
Good
is one of the.
catch. Yeah.
Because that's one of the things we saw, the safety thing this summer, was that it's utilized specifically for opioids. Like it comes from a different door and working with students, but that is something they use specific to opioids, and they're using it at our primary already, so as a curriculum.
I think we're in year 3 of PACS at primary.
Yeah.
And PACS is a kind of restorative, discipline, student behavior management framework and program that just allows basically a campus-wide effort initiative to kind of just utilize some of the same best practices and kind of just measures where we're all working under the same framework to help our students gain certain perspectives and objectives about behavior, their own kind of self-coping mechanisms and management. And so it's been a really good thing. And it's completely free.
And my kid uses it, because it comes from all this, but my kid talks about it all the time. She's in first. But it's like incentivized. I got to sit through the training the first year. So it incentivizes good behavior and really helps with the bad behaviors or the unwanted behaviors. They don't call them bad behaviors, but.
Yeah, it's a new way of really looking at how to do discipline, not necessarily from a punitive measure, but more of a restorative, corrective, positive measure.
So then how does that play into the opioid process and all that? Like,
It has to do with like the rewards in the brain and how they treat the children and stuff. So it's like teaching them a reward system that's positive, which then has to do with how the opioids impact the brain and stuff like that.
And are we touching on anything like that at the intermediate or no?
Do we have any intermediate representatives?
I don't think they have PACS. I know that I watched it when I was here the
I know we're
first
not
year.
doing touching on that at all.
I don't
No, right?
Not yet.
Is it something that would be high school appropriate too, or?
The one I said there was very elementary.
Yes, unfortunately, that's where some of
They're trying to hit them at the event
struggles
level.
come.
That makes sense.
That's why intermediate, that PACS, like 5th grade they don't respond too well to it.
Yeah, 'cause
Like they do at primary.
Yeah, the primary is really a good level, but if I have a 5th grader, he'd probably laugh at me and be like, "You're right." It's that weird age, but.
Yes, that's where the rub is, as far as trying to find something that is still engaging, still kind of high interest, but also mature enough so that we don't lose students. That's a tough period between like 5th and 7th. Because 8th, some of the maturity starts kicking in and you can kind of almost trick them into being older and responsible citizens by leading by example. At least that's how I did it as a principal. Totally tricked them into the whole thing, incentivized it. And so I used my 8th graders to kind of lead the charge to help with 6th and 7th grade. Just because my 6th grade was off the chain. And I can fully say that just because they were. And so that was my strategy as far as helping that particular grade level, because it was clear to me that the adult message wasn't resonating or transferring. Having a peer-to-peer was a much more powerful way of trying to relay that same message. And so that's just me kind of sharing some of the things I've done, but perhaps some of the things that maybe we can look at too if we know intermediate or just a particular campus or grade level is struggling or just requires a bit more effort, if you will. Okay, so with just talking about fentanyl, are we okay with using one pill kills if and when we would like to use that curriculum from TA?
Sure.
Yes.
Okay, we're gonna approve it, so we're gonna be good to go on that. And then at some point, we will kind of build out that district-wide implementation plan where we've already started working on handbooks from last year, talking about anti-bullying, anti-harassment. We also put together a suicide risk assessment handbook, both of which are on our website. So if you were to search for bullying,
I also just wanted to go back real fast. The thing you had is from the Texas Human Health Services, so all their stuff is evidence-based that they use and post. So the one pill kills is evidence-based.
our handbooks are right here. So anybody can access them. Follow our procedures. For instance, if you want to know more about what counselors are required to do, some of the documentations, or just some of the things that they will work with our students on.
And is that something that we're trying to make people aware of? Because I know that our website is not always the greatest, and
Yes.
so it's there.
We're trying to make the efforts.
Yeah. So is that something that maybe at least can be mentioned on Parent Square or something like that, that it at least lives there, that we know
Yes.
where to find it?
Well, part of what we're hoping to do is as we meet amongst ourselves internally, that those are messages that the campuses are taking and utilizing based on how they would like to communicate, but we can definitely do something from a district
Just at least that
standpoint.
way they know it's
Well,
there.
absolutely.
You know what I mean, while you've captured their attention.
Definitely,
Because I think there's a lot of good stuff on the website that people don't know is there.
I would agree with that. Okay, on to one of the more interesting topics, Narcan. And we do have Nurse Abbott here, and we do know that based on what SB 629 is telling us, which is that we do have to implement a district policy for maintenance, administration, and disposal of opioid antagonists, I can hardly say that word for some reason, that serves in grades 6 through 12. Okay? So as we know that policy is gonna come, eventually, once we adopt the policy, then our job and responsibility will be to, what do we want that to look like in real time? And so one thing that has come out is the Texas School Nurses Organization Narcan Toolkit, which is pretty comprehensive. It's got some really good stuff here. And I believe some of this is what we saw from Mr. Schauer. From his presentation, I think he utilized some of the lessons from this website. And so, like I said, really all-encompassing, some really good facts, some really good just documents in general. Blah, 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 blah. And then some really good forms and documentation, just that if we wanted to make this our protocol, we could, because this has already been approved. It's one of the first ones. So, Nurse Abbott, do you have anything you'd like to add into this conversation?
No, so we would just have the Narcan at middle school and high school, right?
6 through 12, yeah.
ACC.
And
ACC.
Yeah, say, grades 6 through 12.
But also ADP or ACD
DAP.
or ADC. ADC. Right, what is it called?
ADC.
ADC when they're at their home
ADC.
campus is what I think she's talking about.
Because
Yes.
it's gonna be off.
We would have it there too.
But this is
So
something
then
that has to
anyone-
be administered by a nurse,
No.
right?
No.
No.
Not per se.
Okay, but we have to be
We have to
trained
attend
in how to
trainings.
administer it.
That's the key.
So we at least need one person. If we don't have an on-site nurse, we would, ACC, like us, we would need at least one person to get trained.
Yeah, and I did
Or-
see in there like the skills checkoff sheet to
Yeah.
where anyone who would be responsible for the Narcan and in the event that they would need to administer it, they would just have to be checked off.
So Denise has some good information for that, information for district campuses.
Coastal Bend
Wellness
Foundation, going to the high school on Monday to do a training. So,
It's for staff.
This coming Monday, it is for staff.
During our faculty meeting from 4 to 5.
Yeah. It's short. But they are gonna provide the training on how to administer Narcan, as well as for the staff to know how to identify someone who's experiencing an overdose. So we can send those invites out.
Please do.
And they are also gonna provide for Narcan. So I guess if that's okay, if one of each campus can get one of those, at least to have for now.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then when you create the process and can go from there.
Something else that Denise learned was can't think of the word. We assumed that our police officers were carrying them, but Denise asked specifically.
Yeah,
What did we learn?
that they do not carry it on them. And they do not carry it on their police vehicles because most of them are not really on actual duty. They're, it's a different, so they don't have it on them. So I actually believe that this process that y'all are gonna implement in the school district is very much needed, and.
I would have assumed the same thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, isn't that kind of almost like, maybe that's why we shouldn't assume, but it's like, that's a great example of thinking one way, and that's perfectly normal, like I even assumed that. And then once I learned it wasn't the case, I was like, oh, now I know why the policy's coming. Because of that type of situation.
And it's already happened, before I was here at TM, I was in Clallan, and there was a student who had an episode, or who had a situation, and the nurse, the next day we had a meeting, a staff meeting, and the nurse was just like, the child was looking at me straight in the eye, just when she would come to, I don't wanna die, and it was just episode after episode. We had already had 3 incidences on campus, so it's already in our backyard, it's already here, you know what I mean? There's no need to wait, so.
Oh, yeah.
And that's why the policymakers acted very quickly this summer, realizing that it's happening, it's here, and if we don't understand it and work to prevent it, it's not gonna fix itself.
Well, the
at all.
biggest distributor of fentanyl was in Houston.
And I got to sit through.
For the world.
I got to sit through a presentation over the summer at the safety conference with the Forever 15 project, I think is what it's called. And Hayes County ISD has a lot of information. They lost 6 students this last year to fentanyl overdoses, and so they have some really cool videos. It's pretty, I don't know, makes your hair crawl in the back of your neck. Scary
And
stuff.
then it makes you think, because in some instances, when you do have someone experiencing an overdose, they have to use more than one nozzle. So it's like, so then how do you prepare for that, so.
What's the shelf life on the Narcan?
It's got a pretty long shelf life.
I don't know.
I don't know, nurse, do you know?
Couple of years.
We have any chemists in the room?
I think the
Former
one I have at
chemist,
home-
but I don't, you work with
I think the one I
Narcan.
have at home
What's
is like
the
a-
half-life?
I want to say the one I have at home that's got the expiration date. It's got an expiration date on it. It's like 3 or 4 years.
So question though, so the 4 that they're giving you, was that intended for 2 campuses and you need to stretch it across 4?
No, that's
It
just
was
what they
just
offer.
intended for our campus, but it's best to distribute.
Well, no, I completely agree with that,
And they're-
but in asking that is because who is providing them?
The Coastal Bend Wellness Foundation is providing them.
But
Because
they're,
is it now they need to be aware that it's really not just it's not going to one, it's really going across.
there are
the
ways
board.
for us to access more free Narcan though. It's not as,
That way, in the event that you have somebody that needs more than one, you're not trying to get to another campus to get it.
right.
Yeah, and that's why the campuses, I guess, are doing what they're doing.
Yeah.
And I'm sure y'all have a budget to purchase those kind of, yeah.
When it
There's different
opens.
resources
Yeah.
within, but also like
But even
they can
as,
come out to ACC and do that, you know what I mean, in the middle school as well, so y'all can come and see it and then invite them out to your campuses, so.
And just keep in mind too, because we are year-round, it's easy to know that we've been in full swing for a good while now. So like, we're about to finish, week 6, if you can even hardly believe it. We'll have 30 full days in session with students by the end of this week. Whereas most districts, and in particular, like in Houston, they're not even starting until next Monday. So we're way ahead of the game when it comes to how things usually fall in a chronological manner. When policy gets set, it trickles down. There's opportunities for districts now to review, to understand, to make sure things get reviewed by the school board and approved, and kind of going through that process. And then once that process happens, taking it and putting it into action. We're kind of doing things a little out of order because we already know that's coming. We've been in session, we're already meeting. So we're talking almost about the action plan before the policy's really been able to be approved. But eventually, all calendars will sync and we'll be at a good place to kind of revisit this for when we do want to kind of consider what that will look like for us, right? Any other questions? Good on that topic? There's really nothing to approve, but I just want to let you know that we will revisit this as soon as we're in a position to approve after the policy comes and we've taken care of that part.
How can, this is like totally off subject.
Yeah.
How can we become part of can we become part of this committee?
You are.
No.
You're here.
Oh.
You can, let's talk later about that. Because one thing I want to keep in mind is that this is a parent-based committee. The majority of our members are parents. Now, whether or not who showed up tonight or who's now going to kind of, now that the meetings have started and if commitments have changed, we can always revisit membership. But that was kind of why at the beginning we talked a little bit about that, but also knowing after tonight, if there is a need to revisit some of that, we can definitely revisit.
And Denise is also a parent.
Yes, I am a parent.
That's right. Love to hear it. And on that note, as again, we try to make this more of a kind of aligned, synced process, streamlined process from the state all the way down to the district level. Governor Abbott will designate a week for fentanyl poisoning awareness. And so we're just waiting to know which week he chooses. I think that will come in the next couple weeks. And finally, I just wanted to touch base real quick on a survey that we gave last year to students. This was a survey that our counselors gave towards the end of the year. You can see that we gave it to 1,337 students, grades 3 through 12. So that's kind of the reason why we don't see the full scope, but also knowing that it's very difficult to get 100% participation. But I would say, given the fact that this was our first district to campus-wide survey that's been done in the last maybe 4 or 5 years, the response levels were really good. We have some really good data to work with, which really fires me up because there's some really good things happening within the data that allows for some really good informed decision-making and possibly some good conversations that can come from this committee to where we can make some decisions about how to move forward with that data. So, because this is SHAC, we will focus on the wellness and the kind of the nutrition and the food items here. And so one thing I did was kind of parsed out the data so we can kind of just look at it from an easier to view type of look. I know this is kind of small right here, and I'm not sure if I can blow it up or not. Maybe I can't. Let's see, it's annotate with Cammy. That's not gonna let me. But here we go. So, talking about wellness, right? Question at the bottom. Here are the response levels. You can see the color with how they responded. Apparently, everybody exercises at least 3 times per week. Apparently, yeah, right.
Have to go to these are students? Okay, maybe
this is where I'm gonna chalk it up to, we are definitely in compliance with our PE.
Right, exactly.
Because there are some requirements there, right?
The ones that don't know are the ones I'm worried about.
Yeah. So, do I get enough sleep most nights? Sometimes, right? This kind of to be expected from our students, right? Especially if there's really no structure or less structure than some. How healthy are our eating habits? Sometimes. Seems to be a bit of a higher selection here. So between eating right and getting good sleep, maybe most of us were kind of aware that our students can be a little all over the place with how they do eat and how they do sleep. But not only do we sometimes think that or just kind of keep that in mind, but now we've got some good data that really tells us that, yeah, our students are being honest. Sometimes that's an issue. I have a healthy lifestyle. I eat breakfast every day, sometimes, which is interesting because all students here in the district have the opportunity to eat breakfast every day.
And 2,250 about eat a day.
Interesting, right? I drink at least 8 ounces glasses of water each day, and that seems to be a pretty high response rate with always.
I don't know if
So I don't know if that's true or not because I'm like thinking to myself, when was the last time I actually had water? 3 8-ounce glasses.
But also, what's their concept of 8 ounces, right? They had 3 sips of water versus, you know what ounces is?
Is this where we need to kind of remind them of what 8 ounces looks like?
Yeah, I think so.
What's that volume?
But this is good conversations, right? Like, it's interesting to see some of the responses, and again, we got over 1,000 responses, so.
Because I know a third grader's like, yeah, sure, I'm drinking water.
Yeah.
I had 3 sips of the water fountain, then that counts 3 8 ounces.
Exactly. I know how to resolve conflict in a healthy way.
That should be a
You can kind of see that we're kind of botched together right there a little bit, where we, maybe not always, maybe not sometimes, but some things happening there. When I feel stressed, I know how to cope. I thought this was an interesting response. Sometimes seem to be the highest, meaning could be some room for improvement or just abilities to grow and learn. And then this right here I thought was interesting. I know a staff member I can talk to who understands my needs. Most said always. So I think that's a nice reflection of our staff and our school. And so some good data there with wellness.
And on that survey, like, so when they're answering, were they required to answer the question?
Yes.
Or, okay.
Yes. And just to kind of quickly go through this one too. And again, if you would like to review the full survey, feel free, it's here. And again, as soon as this meeting's over, I will add everybody's email to the deck where you can access anything that you'd like to access. So when we talk about reflections, this is kind of where we start getting into the social, emotional, and the mental health aspects of the questions. So for instance, I feel sorry for others when they're hurting. I work well with other students, usually, sometimes, okay. I help others when I see a need. I'm about to get through challenging times, so you can kind of see the response rates there. If I commit to a task, I will do what it takes to get it done. A lot of always, okay. When I accomplish learning a skill, I push myself to learn something, okay. Yes, maybe some of them they didn't, but that could be part of the educational aspects of why did you choose what you did, and did you really mean that? And if you didn't or did, that's just stuff we can talk through.
Can we disaggregate this by school, by campus?
Are you asking if Google can do that for me? Yes, we can, because we can break out the results by grade level.
Okay, gotcha.
So it wouldn't necessarily be by like full campus, it would be grades 3, 4, 5.
Yeah, so like on one of those slides you showed up there a second ago that had it broken down where the percentage of the ones that answered always, I would be interested to see how many of those kids
That was the
are.
lower.
Yeah.
It was the lower ones that are
That's
answered
exactly
always.
what I was hoping to hear. How much can we drill down and get into a level where now you've got some really good, meaningful, specific data to work with?
But then again, too, if you said the counselors gave it to a specific student, then they might not have answered truly unless the survey was completely confidential.
It was confidential.
It was, so they didn't have to put like a student ID or anything like that.
And it was done during a class period, right? It wasn't a
Yes.
counselor.
Okay.
By counselors, they were the ones responsible for the survey to
Okay.
disseminate, to make sure it was completed, to make sure things got returned and so forth.
I think we used like an advisory last year. They sent it out and asked them to complete it during advisory.
What was the total school population? I was just curious as to how many students actually respond, what percentage?
About a little over 1,300 students responded.
Oh, so, no, I know, but I mean, versus your total student.
Total student enrollment's 3,655 students, so I'd say around a third, maybe a little over a third.
Okay.
But also knowing that we didn't do pre-K through grade 2, we just did grade 3 through grade 12.
Oh, okay,
About 900, something like that.
Yeah.
okay. So
Well,
that's,
I will say that I was pleased with the response rate.
Good turnout.
yeah, that's good.
Well, because it looked like only 2 didn't.
Yeah.
I'm like, that blew my mind.
Yeah. So, what I found most interesting too was, again, talking about the relationships with the adults at school, talking about the school itself, and just knowing that when we did ask these types of questions, it seemed like we got more always than any other response.
See, and that's where I would be interested on what it looked like at the intermediate versus the high school versus the middle school.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Right now, many of the high schoolers just say always so they could get done with the
Well, that,
survey.
and that too, that's what I'm saying, like, what is the percentage of how they answered?
Yes, I'm not saying that our students gave every answer through honest and vetting and really, but I
Well,
just,
because some of them you look at and you're like, really?
yeah, of course.
But I can,
Always get it.
But I did find this one to be an interesting data poll because to me, this can be where kids go the opposite, where they kind of want to slam you, even though maybe they don't really mean what they're really answering. So I thought it was interesting that the majority of them chose the fact that they are proud of their school.
Yeah, it's good.
It is good. It just means that,
Community.
exactly. I enjoy going to school sometimes. To me, that was a very honest answer. Because I would say most majority of kids do like going to school sometimes, and sometimes they don't.
I only enjoy it sometimes.
Right. And if you were to ask the adults, I wonder what that would look like.
That would be the.
Yeah, I'd say more
green bar,
inverse
pretty
relationship
darn
maybe,
high.
who knows?
yeah.
And here's where we kind of see a little bit of the mental health. I feel nervous or anxious at school. Sometimes, basically all the time. Those were the majority answers. I can stop or control my worrying. Sometimes, seem to be the majority. I feel down or depressed at school.
Never.
Always, sometimes, never, right? So if we go back and know that never is green and sometimes it's orange,
I think too, they have a lot of a social network at school, so even though they may feel like that at home, but at school.
right?
There's that, and there's, their access to having a breakfast and a lunch, and so a lot of those stressors are, cut down at school.
Because school's more than just learning for a lot of our students. Learning is just the foundation, right? And then you build upon that with other types of needs that we work to meet, such as Maslow's hierarchy. And if you want to consider the nutrition, the social and emotional, the relationships, the mental health, the school and the district is responsible for a lot of things now. And the more we're aware of that, the better relationships we build with our students, the more on an intimate level we get to know them, and the better prepared we are to help with whatever needs are not met or just closing those gaps to where we know our efforts are making a difference. Because that's why we're here, right? And so I thought this data was just a good kind of launching springboard piece into some possible action steps we could look at taking. Some of the things that we are going to do with this survey still is work to understand it through the context of our district comprehensive needs assessment, as well as our district improvement plan, and to really use the data to help kind of justify and explain why we will be doing some things a little bit differently this year versus prior years where we didn't really have the data to help guide us in that way. So, are there any questions about that survey or just the data in general? One thing we'll do for this coming year, the 23-24 year we're in, since we did students last year, we're gonna do the adults this year. So there's gonna be a staff survey that will look very similar to this, given at the end of the school year, where we will then look at capturing staff data. Okay? Probably won't ask them how much water they drink a day, but we'll ask them some really good questions.
No, and I just wonder too, like, and, you know, I don't want to be overkill either, but have you thought about polling them at the beginning of the year versus the end of the year? Because there are some things that you put into place to see, like, do you still feel that way? You know what I mean?
As long as I have enough time in the day to do the survey. It takes a while to build the survey, especially since I didn't pay for it.
From a lot of districts that use surveys frequently, they see a decline in people that actually fill them out. Yeah. It's just an oversaturation.
That and just trying to balance surveys with some of the other surveys, like from our bond, and just knowing that generally speaking, we don't do a lot. So if we all of a sudden start hitting people with surveys, it's like, almost like you said, a little overload. And so never knowing really what the best balance is, but getting in the routine of data collection, seeking out feedback, and understanding the stakeholders we're wanting to target. That's kind of what we're trying to build towards, where once we do some students, we'll do some staff, we'll do some community members, and then before we know it, we're routinely doing BOY, EOY, and we have a full-blown procedure in place for data collection and feedback. And so that's another thing that we're working towards as well. So on that note, we're gonna end a little early, which is super awesome. Always staying within the designated time is a good feeling. And just so you all have a heads up, next meeting is October 19th. And one of the biggie topics that we will address will be the district wellness plan. And we'll just talk more about that at that meeting. But that's a wrap, y'all.
Thank you. Thanks so much, sir.
Thank you. Thank you for coming.